popping, everybody? Welcome to episode 51. Holy crapinoli. For no particular reason, I'm Kerri Lewis, and I am here with my amazing co-host, Yankov. And we have the distinct privilege and pleasure and joy of having Alexander, aka AM Arctos. I think I said that
Oh,
right.
yeah, you got it.
Joining us this week. He's been here before, but I am always excited to see where the conversation takes us.
Good to
So,
be back.
guys, what's a problem?
Woo. Well, I've just been pretty busy lately, doing a lot of changes in life, getting ready for my move and moving to a new town, new cool house. I got this cool classic Victorian kind of gothic look to the new place. And of course, I've launched the new season of the podcast, The Space God Memoirs. And got 2 episodes out in the new season. You could stream it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And, just trying to experience new aspects of myself, consciousness, and existence all the time.
I love that so much.
Wow, this is yeah, great.
And yes, I'm moving on to 25 of 2025. So probably all the numerology people out there are like, oh my God, it's a portal. And, well, if it is, I'll make the most of it. And I'll step through that portal into
There you
whatever the
go. You
highest
might
and best
even use it to
existence
move
is.
some stuff to it.
Yeah.
Guys, don't mind me. I'm fighting with Instagram right now. So if you want to kick it off, and then I will jump in because that's how I roll. As soon as I, get things in order.
Fighting with Instagram. Interesting.
Listen, here's the thing. I am always, as Yanko will truly attest, because he's used to me by now. I am always working on my relationship with technology. It's definitely user error, and I'm okay saying that because I'm fully aware of what brings me joy and what doesn't, and figuring out all the stuff with tech isn't always my jam, but I do work within my capacity. So, yeah.
Well, if that makes you feel any better, I struggled with Facebook for a while, and finally, I think I figured it out today. But we'll see after the stream.
Oh, so we are streaming on Facebook right now.
Oh yeah, we're streaming to so many destinations. We're on
Nice.
Kick, Rumble, Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. We're all over the internet.
MySpace.
Oh my God,
MySpace.
MySpace. I never even had a MySpace channel. Okay,
Me
well,
neither.
me and Instagram are whatever, but that's okay. Yeah, it's funny. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I could be wrong. I think Nana met somebody on his MySpace account at whatever point, but I was like, at that point, nah, I wasn't even interested.
Yeah, I skipped it. I'm like, I'm not going to go for that trendy MySpace thing. And instead, I was probably playing a lot of online MMOs or something, World of Warcraft or something.
That is so funny.
My coworkers at the time pranked me by making an account for me. So
Ooh.
I never had access to that MySpace account. That's supposed to be mine.
I wonder what content was on there, because that would be interesting.
I don't even know. I don't even know.
So anyway, while you're here, Alexander, what I was sharing with Yanko, and I'm going to share with everybody else, is me and the amazing Nana Ajman, aka SpongeBob, Dora, all of the other characters that bring him joy to play, have decided to do a show called The Bright Side Chronicles, which really highlights people who are living on purpose and joy. So it's all about joy. It's meant to be light, whether you're a comic, whether you create these amazing podcasts, whether you, whatever brings joy to your life, and how that kind of transmutes throughout the daily rhythms of your everyday life is the conversations we're going to be having. So it's going to be at on Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time starting next week. Woo woo! And I look forward to having both of you on our show.
Oh yeah, sounds fun. I'll totally do that at some point.
I
Yeah,
was gonna say that's right at your alley.
yeah. I want to actually meet Nana because it
Oh, you'll
sounds
meet
really
him.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's super cool.
Yeah.
I feel like Nana and I need to do a world tour, because even my
Mhm.
clients, one of my clients in England, somebody in Europe, and then my aunt is like, I need to meet Nana. Like I know.
Now,
I
will
sh-
this show feature cosplaying? Like, where for every episode, everyone's going to be dressed as like new characters and costumes?
well, I think Nana might, because
Nice.
that's his jam. I can certainly attest to the fact that 9 out of 10 times I'll be wearing something with skulls and not cosplay, but people are welcome to show up as they are. In fact, I just dropped an episode that's launching in 2 weeks with Bombshell Becky, and she is another cosplayer who makes amazing costumes. Like, it is just out of
Ooh.
this world. But her day job is a dialysis nurse.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm like, talk about somebody who is able to infuse joy into her everyday life. And something I shared with her, as we look at this world that's expanding and stuff, how cool would it be to have office space where, I don't know, somebody's going through cancer treatments and they have a nurse show up as like some random character as working on their stuff. I'm like, joy is a powerful medicine, guys.
Oh yeah, I think the right cosplaying nurse could probably help heal you.
Absolutely.
I don't know, maybe like a Patch Adams kind of thing,
Yep.
but like you're dressed as an anime character instead.
And that's the thing, is like, we have this archaic structure that it needs to look this certain way. And I mean, even yesterday, for anybody who caught it, like, Nana dressed up in a female Winnie the Pooh costume. So we had a full-on dress on with the Winnie the Pooh, and we're walking through the
Hmm,
gym, and you could just see, I mean, people of all walks of
that's fun.
life were like perplexed, and then you saw they were amused, and they were like, and it was just interesting. And then you see, like, some people want to ask him about it, other people like, this dude is straight weird. And
Hmm,
I get to just watch it
nice.
all unfold, and I'm like, this is awesome.
But this is where the party's at.
But it's true, and so, highlighting that, I was telling Yanko prior to us going live today, I jumped on, he's like, oh, your energy's popping off already, which he didn't say because he don't talk like me, but
Hmm.
essentially that's what he said. And I said, my nephew came up and he just bear hugged me. Right. And like, he
Hmm.
just held on to me. And honestly, if I didn't have the show, we'd probably just be sitting hugging. He's
Oh,
under 2 years old. But I think that behavior is ties in line with cosplaying, or mosh paging, or creating space god memoirs. I always say Odyssey for whatever
well,
reason. I don't know.
the Odyssey is a great work of classic literature.
Yeah, I didn't read it, so I wouldn't even know. But the whole point is the gift that we give to the world is just allowing ourselves to be fully expressed, but ask for our needs, and by just showing up and doing it. And then
Oh
people will
yeah.
either meet them or not.
Oh yeah, I mean, I look for any excuse to dress up in a fun costume and
I know it.
express myself. I know recently when Party City by me was going out of business, they had their 75 to 80% off sale. So I got like a whole, like I got 3 bags full of cheap costumes, and so I could have like a Deadpool costume, a Thor costume, any random collection of wigs and like mustaches and masks and everything. And so expect more costumes from me on my social media.
Yeah, I know. I love it. So I'm curious, do you wear those costumes out in your regular day life, or you just kind of, when you're inspired to create content, you do it?
When I'm inspired to create content, I mean, in my regular life, I try to dress up and, probably a bit too flashy of clothes for certain occasions to try to, have cool outfits all the time, but maybe not like costumes, but it's close.
Yes.
Maybe sometime I'll recruit your friend Bombshell Becky and making my actual superhero costume, and that will be my new everyday life. You never know.
Yeah, she's an awesome sauce. I should have her on the show, Yanko. Anyway, what about you,
Yeah,
Yanko?
what a great idea. And we're also following each other with Alex and TikTok, and
Yeah,
I love his random drinks reviews that he does. And sometimes
those are
when I
fun.
go to stores and I look at this weird like random pops, and I'm trying to find out what it is, and when I find out, and I'm thinking of you, and I'm like, maybe he could do a review on this drink because it's like really weird looking.
Oh, if you find some weird new drinks, feel free to like send them over, mail them to
I
me or
know, right? I know.
whatever.
What inspired you to do drink reviews? That's like so random.
Well, probably ever since I've been a very, very little child, like a toddler, I was into drinking things. Like my parents called me the juiceaholic when I was like 2 years old, and because I was always be drinking juice, and then kind of got into different flavors of energy drinks and different flavors of sodas, and I guess I never lost that childlike love for them, and so like now I think that's just kind of a fun part of my personality to taste all these different drinks that are out there. And
Yeah.
eventually, once Space God or another property of mine gets big enough to have like branding and all that, I'd love to have my own brand of custom made energy drinks based on the series and the characters and all that. It'd be fun.
Well, that brings me to a question that I like to ask. What would you say, um, flavor wise, they will taste like? Um, do you
Wow.
have an idea, or
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean,
I would
after
have.
drinking so many drinks, you probably have some favorites or not?
Yeah, I'd say one essential one would be a really good tasting blue raspberry drink. Blue raspberry might be one of my favorite things, especially if you put the right maybe ginseng or ginger in there to flavor it just a little bit more, and just like something that really has that sweetness but a bit of a kick to it. That would be an essential flavor. I'd probably have a cherry flavored one, maybe some kind of acai kind of flavored drink, because there's some great acai sodas out there, and probably a custom crafted like Dr. Pepper style beverage. Each would be based off of different characters and have different characters from the series on the label. That would be
Wow.
appropriate.
That's
Wow.
that's some deep, deep thought
I
into
think
your
about this kind of
your
stuff.
energy drinks. Damn. So do you cook?
A little bit. I do cook sometimes. I've been between houses lately, so I haven't been cooking as much
Yeah.
until this next week. I'll be staying with family, but yeah, I cook sometimes, not masterfully. Probably like my favorite staple of cooking is just making omelets and hash browns for dinner.
Yeah, but to make a good omelet is not an easy feat. Real talk. Like yeah. But anyway, I'm listening to you talk about your flavors of energy drinks, and I think about the fact that I am very creative in the kitchen, and I'll try new things, and I fail often, and my poor family ends up eating some really interesting food.
Nice.
However, I love the process of like combining ingredients and seeing what the outcome will be. It's so fascinating,
Nice.
and I think like that to me brings me so much joy.
Oh yeah, I remember one time, a couple times as a kid, I just tried mixing like every weird sweet drink in the house together. Like it would be like sodas mixed with chocolate syrup, with orange juice, and tossed in a few, I think, chocolate eggs from Easter or something like that, and see what kind of concoction you could make.
So I have a twin sister, and I'm one
Ooh.
of six. And when my twin sister and I were young, we would dare each other to eat these horrible food concoctions. And I'm talking about like dog and cat food mixed with like
Oh.
condiments and cheese. And like, I just think about how gross that was.
Mhm.
But there's such beauty in our ability to just experiment, which I think this whole life is about, is experimenting, whether it's with food or cosplay or energy or working with the astro body, which
Oh
Yanko and I
yeah.
were talking about beforehand, you know?
I'll get to that. I have go on.
Mm.
No, go ahead, share your thoughts.
Well, I wasn't gonna skip through, but when I watched the trailer of the Space God Memoirs, um, he was hinting about implants and things like that. So
Oh
I was
yeah.
gonna like share some more.
Yeah, share. Do share. I love hearing talk about astral stuff,
Right,
dreams, out of
right,
body experiences, all that, visions.
yeah. And we're actually talking about it just before you hop on the show, because I was
Oh.
like, oh, there's people that deal with this kind of stuff with like astral implants, and Kerri was like, what is that about?
Mm.
And I want to hear your thoughts about that.
Well, I'll say this. One of my biggest inspirations in Space God is my own experiences with visionary states, with what people might call astral projection, with lucid dreaming. And I admit, in that kind of state of consciousness, you can get all sorts of cool insights and connect with all sorts of different realities, worlds, and beings. How objectively real it is, I don't know. But how objectively real is this supposed physical reality we go around in either? I don't know. But yes, since I've been a little kid, I've had frequent lucid dreams. I frequently had the experience of like it feels like I'm floating outside of my body or moving around in this non-physical space. And I'll say over the years, I've had some of my most profound experiences there. You know, I remember
Can we
some.
pause real
Go ahead.
quick? So, for the listening audience who may be like, what are they talking about? What is astral projection versus lucid dreams? Can you share with them that and then dive deeper into what you were about to say?
It's kind of a fine distinction between the two sometimes. First, I'll say this: lucid dreaming, for you people who haven't experienced it, is when during a dream you become aware that you're dreaming, and from then, like you could go fly, you could take control of the dream. Some people make it about fulfilling their sexual fantasies. Others will, face down their fears. Whereas the idea of astral projection, that comes from kind of older mysticism and traditions like that, where the idea is that kind of inlaid within your physical body is your astral body, which is kind of in some ways maybe one step closer to your pure soul or whatever. And the idea is that that can separate from the physical body and you could be conscious in that astral body. That's kind of an older way of looking at it. And I
Yep.
know some people just say like, no, you're just switching your consciousness between different frequencies and choosing to observe a different part of existence. And the idea, what I've come to realize is that there isn't necessarily a solid difference between astral projection and lucid dreaming. The difference is that when you're in a dream, or even in a lucid dream, you're experiencing maybe your own local mind stuff, these images and characters and scenes that exist within your kind of local self headspace,
Yep. The
and you
site
can
you
explore that. Whereas the idea is when you're doing astral projection, you're venturing beyond that and into maybe a more shared reality. Like if it's like a video game, instead of experiencing your own private level or instance, you're then experiencing the kind of shared lobby of the astral plane that everyone
That
communicates
is
in.
an exceptional explanation, and I really appreciate that because that gives me insight. Because hey, I'm just along for the ride with you guys. I said to Yanko, if I never reach any of the stuff that you're at, I'm good because I'm happy in my little loving space of just being loved, you know.
Oh,
But it's fascinating to learn about. So, like, then again, like, share, you know, since you were a kid, you were saying that you've always had these experiences. And Yanko's question was about, I don't know, some device, or what were you saying?
Well, implants in the astral body, because in theory you have the physical, the mental, the astral body. You have those multidimensional, parts of yourself
yeah,
that make you whole. But in the physical, you only take the physical for granted, and you don't venture in other parts. But they're as much real as the physical body is real to me. And that's what struck the conversation, because you know Kerri asked a good question, saying, "Well, isn't everything in the mind?" And I was like, "No, the mind, it's taken apart, but that's above the mind, and and you can perceive it because it's kind of like the eyes looking at the eyes. The mind is there, and there's like levels above it that the mind cannot perceive. And then in my understanding, the mind, it's like the cable that connects the internet to the computer, that connects the soul in the other dimensions of oneself, or parts, to the physical, and work almost like a firewall in a way. So that's how I explain it to Kiri.
interesting way of looking at it. Definitely.
But I think, you know, something that you said, Alexander, which I find, like, I feel like this is where I come from, is everything's concept, right? Everything is perspective and concept within our individual self. Like, and again, I haven't had the same experiences. I've certainly never astro projected. Maybe I've lucid dreamed once or twice. I don't even know. But um from where my experience in this human experience has been is um it's all individual concepts. It's just, it's what your beliefs and your understanding is from that, and that's the experiences you'll have, right?
Maybe. Yeah, I try to have pretty flexible and fluid beliefs on these kind of things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's all different ideas we can have and different ways we have of explaining what we experience or what lies beyond our experience. And I don't claim to know what the true nature of mind and reality and all that is,
Neither
but
am I.
it's all good.
Yeah, no, it's there's no way we could possibly know.
Yeah, and especially
Right.
when you're delving into the realms that people call like astral projection or having out of body experiences. I think I've had enough experiences there to know that it's not necessarily a solid, definable thing. They can be variable. They may not be objective experiences. And in fact, they might be quite subjective. And that's okay. I mean, it might be that reality itself isn't this absolute thing that we tend to think of here in binary terms, but it might be more variable.
You
It's
know,
hard to
I love,
explain.
yeah, no, so so yesterday I was in a meeting, no, 2 days ago, I was in a meeting with this group. We're all creating a course together, and all different walks of life all over the world. And I was listening to somebody talk about getting a vaccine to go to Africa, and another person talking about how they have to be cautious of this vaccine, blah, blah, blah. And then how you can, like, I don't know, figure out ways to bypass the system so you don't have to get the vaccine to go to Africa.
Mm,
To which this person who needs the vaccine was like, yeah, I'm not, you know, I really work hard to be in integrity, but I'm not above, you know, have doing something nefarious to be able to go to Africa and not get this vaccine because that's
mm.
what feels right for them. And in my mind, I'm like, well, even that is just a belief that is is bullshit. Like, why? One, if it serves you, do it. If it doesn't serve you, don't do it. If you believe the vaccine's gonna screw you up, don't take it. If you don't believe it, take it. Like, it is so like
Sure.
there, it's just too vast. We can't possibly know. And that's why in the work I do with people, my job is not to condition you to figure out like you need to do X, Y, and Z to live this life. My job is to hopefully mirror back to you joy and the experience of life, and however you determine feels good for you in this time and space reality, do it. And because it makes sense and it feels good for you. But the belief, I think, is really what keeps people stuck in a lot of these conditioned ways of living, because this amazing person who is the most integral of people, right, has worked incredible, like, is still seeing that this choice could be nefarious. And I'm like, I don't see it that way. I see it as you doing you.
Yeah, though, yeah, I've spent a lot of time among, alternative health people, and, I've certainly delved into a lot of those ideas myself, and I've definitely studied my share of conspiracy theories and other things like that, and I've delved pretty deep into them. And I know a lot of people have had a lot of passionate ideas about the vaccine. You know, some desperately wanted you to take it. Others were like, no, if you take it, it'll send your soul into a virtual reality where Satan will torture you or something. They actually said this. And yet, I kind of went with this very visionary experience I had a number of years ago where I was kind of pulled out of this dream and shown all these amazing things by what seemed to be this ascended master known as Babaji, who's from the yoga
I
traditions.
love Papa G.
And there, me and Babaji were one, and he was showing me all these, different ways of flying and teleporting and accessing like other dimensions and all these other like past life kind of things in this very vivid experience. And eventually, he took me to what seemed like this future Earth. Everything was covered in nanotechnology. All the animals had become robotic, all the plants as well. And yet, in this visionary experience, none of this stuff could touch me because my vibration was too high. And so, like, I say this to like people who are spiritual regarding things like, vaccines or other things that can only harm your physical body potentially or help it. Don't worry about it.
Thank
If you keep yourself happy, confident above it all, it's not something for you to worry about. Just be yourself and do what you're gonna do.
Well, but so here's the thing. Like, yeah, I love that. Thank you. I agree with you. Like, first off, I've gotten tons of vaccines. And
Yeah.
I actually had a beautiful, our dear friend Elena. She didn't tell me directly because we didn't actually have the conversation that I got vaccinated, but she's like, yeah, the people who got vaccines are like, they're going to die soon or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's an interesting perspective. But at the end of the day, I could fucking die walking out my house and getting whacked by a truck. Like, I don't freaking
That's right.
know, right? That's one. But
Yeah.
I think the bigger conversation that I was trying to highlight is this perceived idea that, like, you're nefarious or you're bad if you bypass an illusionary system of right or wrong, good or bad, so that you can go to Africa. Like, who freaking cares? This goes back to exactly what you said, Alexander, which is why I love having you on the show and I love what you do. Is do what feels good for you. Whatever brings you joy. It does not have to make sense to me. I couldn't care less. If I'm with Alexander and he is dressed in a fucking pink tutu and yellow wig and he's happy and he's having the best damn time, well, he just brought me joy because his energy's popping off and now my energy's popping off. And now you have two people who are like, ah, and then you add into the mix.
Nice.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not advocating that like if your inclination is to hurt people and do psychotic murderous things to do that.
Well, but
Just,
here's the thing, right? Like there's universal laws. I tell my clients all the time, understand that there are universal truths that you cannot escape. So if you make choices that are not loving, right? I mean really not loving. And loving can be not getting a vaccine, or loving can be cutting off a family member because
yeah,
the relationship is toxic. That can be loving because
you
that
can.
comes from self-love. But if I were like, oh, I'm gonna go, I don't know, skin this cat for the fun of it, right? Well, you will have that come back to you. You cannot. So I'm not advocating for anybody to do anything that is outside of love, because ultimately you're going to reap what you sow. But I do believe that when you are in love, everything like no act of love is wasted, and it impacts the entire, all of creation, whatever it is.
Yeah, at least to me, morality can be a fairly fluid thing, like belief systems as well. Uh, if you, at least if you're kind of centered in yourself and you do what you feel is out of love and out of your own joy, you're probably not going to be hurting other people unless unless you just think you're operating out of love and you're really operating based on your own fears and traumas. Even a lot of people I've known who have like to do the talk about love and compassion. Some of them operate based on their own fears, and
Oh, sure.
often whenever you're trying to manipulate others or do all this underhanded stuff, you're probably acting out of your fears. And so I think as long as you can keep yourself acting in love and not fear, then you're probably going to be doing some okay stuff. Otherwise, like following the laws, whether you're following the rules or of one system or another, reminds me of like Dungeons and Dragons that I've often played, where there's two different axes of alignment. There's the good and evil, which is like whether you're going to hurt people or help people or whatever, and then there's law and chaos, where a lawful person will be more following the rules, whereas a chaotic person will be going against them. And I like to follow kind of a middle ground there. And Yanko, what's up? You're reaching
I
out. You
know,
trying
I'm
to?
like, Yanko, what you
No, like I'm keep getting dark because the sun it's moving in the alto like
Oh,
alignment.
I'm
So
yeah.
like,
like
I'm like,
man,
are
there you
you
go. Now
doing?
I popped up.
Oh,
I
I'm
gotta
like,
like reach
another
out to the
English.
camera to focus me.
Oh yeah, you got
And it
those huge
blurs
windows
everything in the
there.
back.
Oh
Oh
my
yeah.
God, that was so funny. I'm like, are you sending us energy? I'll
Yes.
take
I
it.
do
Wow.
energy now.
Right.
Look at this. I'm drinking coffee and now it's gonna go dark.
I love it so much. No, but to your point, Alexander, that's the thing is, everything that I've come to understand is everything is fluid. And the more control society puts into um communities and stuff, the less I think there's alignment, because truly, to your point, right? If you're in joy, guess what happens? You're in spirit. So you become inspired. That's where the present moment unfolds in perfect perfection of like just yumminess, right? And if you're in joy and you're inspired, you're called to do just like the thing that feels good for you. And sometimes it's not going to make sense for everybody else, but it's certainly not going to harm anybody else, because it comes from this loving flow of energy that is tapped into universal consciousness. Like, and so it's just, again, where I work with people is to learn yourself, because in learning yourself, you're able to give yourself permission to stop filtering yourself so much, to stop performing, to stop. I'm gonna tell you right now, Nana laughs at me because he knows there's a red light with a no turn on red sign that I'm popping every time I go to it, because it's a stupid place to have a no turn on red, because
Nice.
people are turning left, so you're clearly not going to get. And he's just like, there you go again. I'm like, well, I mean, it doesn't make sense to me, so I'm not going to follow it.
Yes, and I find that the part of us that craves control over others, over the environment, over society, is that small part of us, the ego mind, some might call it, that wants to grasp and own everything, that's ultimately insecure and it feels small and separate and in danger.
Yes.
And if we kind of move past that into this higher expression of ourselves, then we're probably not going to crave that control quite as much.
Yeah, I think from my experience, love is the most feared experience in humanity.
Yeah.
Real love. Every time I reach out to somebody from just like, hey, like, I love you. And if I don't know them well, 9.5 times out of 10, there's immediate response of, what do you want from me? What's your angle? How you like it, like this natural defense, like, mm. And it has taken me years to break
Mm.
down that wall with certain people. Some people I still have, and that's okay. But I still choose to lean in because that's love. If I'm called to give you love, I'm just going to give you love. I'm not going to concern myself with your response to it. And hopefully
Yeah.
that's teaching people that love really is unconditional. You can be a jerk to me and I'm still always going to choose love. Now, I will say it is a moment by moment choice because, to your point, Alexander, we all have the small mind, the ego. And so there's certain times where like my ego feels some type of way. It's like butt hurt that Sally Sue looked at me and said I was cuckoo banana
Yeah.
pants. But then I made a choice. I'm like, okay, so I can feed this part of me that says who she thinks she is, she blah, blah, blah. Or I could be like, okay, I'm going to choose to love you anyway. And I'm going to choose to love the fact that I responded that way and just be like, okay, it is what it is and keep it moving.
Yeah, and keep in mind, when I'm talking about love, I'm not saying people need to be passive, and it's not loving in my mind to let a bully continue to be a bully. And it's
Yes.
not like, oh, I will let you do what you do, even if you hurt anyone. No, it might be more loving to stop that bully, put them in their place, lay the smack down a bit. Just don't get too emotionally attached to that smack down and
Yes.
become the bully yourself, and you'll be good.
Yeah,
Well,
but
I,
I think some of that stuff might come up from like texts and other things, because like anybody that's in the spiritual development, they have to be the spiritual person and do this
Oh,
like a ego thing, and it goes about that that one story where they were occupying some country, whatever, and they were just about to kill this monk, and the guy that was gonna kill him was saying, "Don't you know who I am? With one blink of an eye, I can, cut your head with the sword or like kill you or something." And then the monk grabs the sword and says, "Don't you know who I am? With not blink of an eye, I can stuck that sword in myself and kill myself." You
hmm.
know. So it kind of goes the same way of like, all right, you're not responding, you're not like even getting to the point where you're not preserving the body out of like non belief system or whatever, because there's instinctual things for self-present, preservation. Like somebody hits you
Sure.
and you want to hit him right back, that instinct, comes up to protect yourself. And so it goes the same way. You know, just like you said, you're not going to allow somebody to bully you just because you're spiritual or whatever or loving.
well, that's why I tell people, and I totally agree with you, Alexander and Yanko. Like, I think people have this idea at times that like really leaning into unconditional love. And again, guys, for me, I can only speak for me, but it's always a choice. I continuously make this choice. Sometimes it takes me like a day to get back to that choice. No lie, but um is super soft and fluffy, and it's not. Sometimes the most loving thing I can do is say, hey, the way in which you're speaking to me doesn't feel right, and if you're going to continue this behavior, we're not going to have a relationship. Or it's loving to stand up for a right that you feel like strongly about. It's again, it's it's not so much, it doesn't have to make sense. It has to come from this part of you that does, it just feels so right. And it's not going to make sense for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like probably nationally and globally, those of us who are loving and accepting and kind maybe do need to step forward into a place of strength more, and not let us ourselves fall into a place of passiveness, and where we just let the bad guys do everything because they have the strength of will. I think sometimes those with more angry and hateful intent, they do seem stronger sometimes because they have very strong opinions. They have very strong seeming actions. Because the rest of us need to step up and stop being neutral and passive and start actually being good and loving, which isn't neutral or passive usually.
That brings me up to a situation. So one of my daughters came to me the other day and they were like, I'm not friends with this person anymore, and proceeded to explain to me that, I mean, this person's ideology was very fear-based, right? It's just a fear-based ideology. And I know full well, because I'm immersed in the community, that this entire community that I dropped my children in is a very fear-based, closed-minded community.
Mhm.
And I said to her, I was like, look it, because and the reason she didn't want to be friends with her is because this person was going on about their ideology and stuff. And
Yeah.
I was like, yes, I totally get where that can feel challenging to what you know to be true. And yet, might you consider, and you have to do what feels right for you, and there's no right or wrong, it's what feels good for you. Another possibility in learning to love that person where they are at, because you being who you are and not like creating this divide can shift the mindsets of people without you challenging them or being argumentative, but just showing up as your fully expressed self. Because I see so much division happening because we're taking these hard stances and we're cutting
Mm.
off people who disagree with us or don't feel right. Like, instead of choosing love, like for me, I send love to people who I don't necessarily align with
Yeah.
the way in which the choices that they make for countries or whatever, because that's where my power lies, is staying in love rather than dividing. But I'm
Yeah.
not passive in any respect. And so I also think not being passive could be sitting in this chair, cultivating love and sending that loving energy to people too.
Sure. I think there's no absolute right answer in those kind of situations. It depends on the situation and the people involved. Like,
Yeah.
if your friend has some really toxic beliefs and ideas, there's certainly value sometimes in sticking around and maybe showing them by example another way. But sometimes there reaches a point where maybe their bad behavior becomes abusive, or you're not helping them when possibly the best thing to do is to cut them off. It can vary. And speaking of cutting off, Yanko's gone.
I know Yanko said,
Up,
peace,
up there he is.
I'm out.
No, it took me a while. Connection's kind of spotty in the office, but you could have continue on. I'm back.
Oh, yeah,
I'm
I thought we were.
back in the saddle again.
Or however that song goes.
See, you're the best, because you'll totally jump in and do that crap with me. But see, like, to the listening audience, that's the whole point. Like, that is inspired action, right? Like, I was, Yanko jumped up, then I sing, then
Yeah.
Alexander did some, and and that is our true superpower. And I also think that when we stay in that power, Yanko and Alexander,
Mm.
that's when we're not passive. Because if I'm inspired, like, I don't know, let's just say I see a minority, somebody of color being treated poorly by somebody on the
Mm.
street, and I'm just chilling and I'm happy and I'm in spirit. I could be called to interject right there, right? Like, I don't know. And that's the thing about, I truly believe, I always say I don't need to plan because I'll just be called to do the thing that I need to do in the moment that I need to do it.
Mm. Yeah, and that's okay. Learning how to improvise. I found that like learning improv, at the comedy clubs and stuff has been a great life skill because you learn to be in the moment and to do whatever's best in the moment. And
Yeah.
Whatever, yeah,
I didn't
whatever
realize
feels
you
great.
did comedy.
yeah, actually, for years, I've done it at places like Second City out in Chicago. One of the places where a lot of the SNL people have studied. I've done it at some more local theaters that are more in the suburbs and a couple other places in Chicago. And well, I say my first journey into improv was through Dungeons and Dragons, where you're the dungeon master, creating all these different characters, or whatever, a player coming up with your own. But yeah, at the theaters, like, can really help you. To me, can be a spiritual experience, learning how to be in the moment, to take on these other aspects of yourself. And yeah, we all have lots of different aspects that we can express through costumes or through characters or whatever, even in our daily lives. And yeah, it's can be magical.
I love that so much. Yeah, and that's the thing is I think our whole life is improv though.
Yeah.
It really is, and that's why again it's like stripping down this illusion that we need to conform or look like or you know express ourselves a certain way. I fundamentally work toward, I'm not always great at it, but I work toward not assuming I know who I am.
Nah.
Like, you know what I mean? In any given
Yeah.
moment, I don't know. Like in 2 hours, like earlier this week, right? I'm plunging a toilet. I get shitty water all over my face, and I was really mad. And then
Yeah.
I was but I wouldn't have known who I was in that moment until I went
No.
through the experience.
Yeah, it might not be even a matter of like knowing who we are. Sometimes it's like who we truly are might not be definable. It
Yeah,
may not be something that can be just pinned down to a set of words or a identity. It makes me think of, even William Shakespeare has the "all the world's a stage" quote, where, we're all just actors on a stage. And, even this identity that we cling to in our lives may just be a character from a
yeah,
certain point of
It
view.
is. It is.
Yeah.
And that's why I say I think to me it's more of a roles that you're playing because you're
Yeah.
having different roles and if you want to be like really um, this on role, then you can say I'm a showman or I'm a podcaster or I'm a depends on what you're doing. A driver, you're driving the car, or I'm a
Yeah.
cook, I'm cooking. But you're just taking on whatever it's happening around you, and you claiming it to be you, which is not.
Yeah. No, and I find ultimately it's all pretend, you know,
Right.
which is why I don't particularly cling to identities of like a nationality or a religious identity or being part of a political party or something like that. Like maybe I do some of those things, but they don't define me.
yeah.
I'm more than all that. And at the same time, I'm nothing, I'm everything and nothing. But
I mean, it's so true. And it's so good when you get to that space and you can just be and you're like, oh, it's indescribable.
and
It
of
really
course,
is.
yeah, go ahead.
Go
And
ahead. I was
that's
gonna say it
like,
really is.
yeah, and of course, when I'm in that headspace or beyond headspace place, that's how I feel. But sometimes, of course, I too feel that small me that feels separate, that feels isolated and alone and cut off from everything else and everyone else. And that could be a real horrible place to be in for an extended period because, if you're separate from everything, if you're just this little identity who's gonna die someday, then there's no reason to be nice to anybody or good to anybody because you're separate from everybody, and so that could turn into utter rage and hatred. So try not to stay there.
Well, yeah, and that's why, like, you can witness it and experience it, and I certainly totally go there sometimes as well. But that's also why I don't assume I know myself, because I
No.
even work with my clients and I tell them, like, I'm a human too. I'm having an experience. I think the honesty is that nobody has it figured out. However, it goes back to choice. And to your point, Alexander, we have a choice to stay there or not, you know. And Yanko and I joke because he's like, "Oh, I'm feeling this way today, and I don't know when I'm gonna get out of it." I'm like, "You can stay there all you want. I'm gonna sit here in my happy cloud. I'm gonna be enjoying."
Mm,
And but for me, it is that choice. And there are lessons, I think, to be learned, that, like,
yeah.
what's bringing us back into that fear, and what do we need, what story in our own psyche do we need to release so that we're not coming back to that fear. But ultimately, I want to experience it, release it, and move out of it as quickly as possible so I can ground myself back into love.
Yeah, I find it's useful to experience it and acknowledge it and see where it's coming from when you're feeling that darkness, what the Jung would call the shadow. You gotta face that stuff down. I've never been one of these new agers who are like light and love. I do not have a dark side. I find the people who like to talk like that often have this like big lurking dark side inside of them that they don't express consciously, but subconsciously it'll come out in their
Yep,
fears
yep.
and all
They're
that.
pushing it.
Where it's like
Yeah.
I kind of think, especially through things like dream work and all that, it's great to face down those nightmares, that dark side stuff, the anger and the fear, and like see what it has to tell us,
Yeah.
see what we can integrate from it, and because there could be a lot of empowerment to be found in facing down that stuff too.
But even with that, a lot of the stuff that it's hidden, it's not gonna be hidden away for a long time.
No,
When the
yeah,
person it's ready to come out, that stuff it's gonna come out forcefully, and
yeah.
then they're gonna be like really miserable because they haven't dealt with it for a very long time. I'm reading a text right now that's talking about something similar, about a monk that was all spiritual and everything was good, and then when the stuff started to come out, he's like, "Oh, I'm having those like odd thoughts and everything, and fighting inside of himself. I'm trying to suppress them and
Mhm.
be like all that spiritual and good and everything, and eventually he faces it all that comes out, but." It's like a bypass, the way I'm thinking it.
Mm.
Yeah, and it doesn't serve you, because the reality is, all right, if we're energetic expression, and how, like, where we operate, it like vibrates wherever it is. If you're saying you're love and light, but you're not examining the darkness, then you're still operating in a lower vibration, because it still exists within you. And not for nothing, but anybody who has done any amount of work energetically feels it. And that's why, like, I've I've struggled, and Yanko and I have these conversations, because I know I have my small self, and then, but I'm like, sometimes I'm just very keenly aware of maybe a person's energy, and I'm like, I don't want to touch them with a 10-foot pole. And
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
like, am I in judgment, or is this just knowing this energy that, nah, their energy doesn't jive with mine? So, for the listening audience, there is no bypassing. Like, and honest to God, there's no hiding it either. As much as you think you can, like, no matter what work you're in, people who are doing this work can tap into it. Even if they never tell you, they're pretty observant. I mean, they know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. One thing I was gonna say, if you experience your multidimensionality self, or being at any point out of your limited self, when you go back to being limited, it kind of feels in a way as a blessing because you're not used to being more. So the filter kind of keeps you in a nice space until you're more comfy to extend more and more because it
Hmm.
could be overwhelming if it just happens in once.
It's interesting you say that because in my stretching today, I was definitely more energy, right? Like, and I was like, wow, it's so fascinating how I vacillate between these really expansive experiences and then these really contracted experiences. And like how I'm like, oh, that feels really good. I'm gonna come back to contracted. And it's just like, and then again, for me, it's all about contrast. It's like whatever I'm called to experience in this moment is always teaching me something. So
And to me, like, that's okay. It's okay to be expanded, to be contracted, whether you're talking about physically, emotionally, spiritually, as long as I don't get stuck in some state and like, oh, I'm my contracted self. That's all that I am. I'm
yeah.
gonna be a miserable, grumpy old man now, or something. No,
You
thank
know,
you.
I love that you highlight that because I know this is a really, maybe this might feel out there for certain listeners, but to bring it back home, um, when I feel a malaise, when I feel like that, like heavy, icky, sticky,
Yeah.
whatever, I find myself in fear that it will take me back to the days where I was super depressed. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going into this depressive state. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, this is just a moment of time.
Yeah.
And so, that again, it's always going to be about choice. Like, if I allow myself to keep that story going, sure, I'm going to eventually find myself plucked into bed for 5 months like I was years ago and not move. But
Mm.
if I just recognize this is just a moment, it's giving me information and I now have a choice to feel differently. I can. And that's really our power. And that's where I want people to recognize it's not that I'm above or Alexander's above or Yanko's above or anybody's above feeling maybe hopeless or defeated by something.
Right.
It's just that we don't live in that experience. We don't let it control our experience. We feel it, we maybe learn something from it, and then we just move out of it. We make a choice to shift out of it in a moment, in an hour, in a day, rather than months and months and years, which some people get stuck into.
Well, you don't claim it. You don't say this is the experience and this is me, and you don't make it part of you, because it's just like anything else. It comes and goes,
Yeah,
same as thoughts and emotions. So if anytime you look for that emotion of like fear or whatever, and you keep claiming it, and you say, "I'm living in fear. I'm living in fear. This is me," and then you claiming it of you're attaching it to you. This is like saying, this car is me, and this shirt that I'm wearing it's me, and everything else. But it's reality is not. So that's another way you can shift out of it. Just observing it and not claiming it and saying, this is me and this is happening because you have no control of it. Like, can you
yeah,
predict your thoughts? You can, you know?
Totally. And I found that once you've kind of moved beyond something a little bit and to the point where you can observe it and then kind of observe the stuff beyond, you can't just go back to that limited state of mind and make that your reality
Right.
again because
Yeah.
part of you knows that, well, that wasn't real. So you might be able to dip your consciousness back into that like depressed, sad, angry state for a bit, but you're not going to stay there once you've kind of gone beyond because, well, it's not real anymore. So what you doing there?
yeah. Yeah,
That's right.
that is so beautifully said. Well, with that, it's about that time that we start to
Indeed.
wrap up this amazing conversation. Um, woo! Is there anything you would
I love having you with
I
us, man. We should
know,
do this more often. Yeah. Look at that.
that's
Yeah, and
amazing.
stuff.
Um, what is there anything you would like to impart on the listening audience before we sign off, Alexander? Besides just Space God memoirs.
Yeah, well, of course, everybody should listen to the Space God Memoirs, available on all major podcasting platforms. But I know today we talked about, you know, morality and the dark side and all that stuff. And, I think there's value to be found in the good, the bad, the ugly, just kind of a matter of flowing through, learning what you can, not grasping onto it, and being yourself. Love.
Wow.
I love that. What about you, Yanko?
Can't think of anything. I was just grateful that Alex joined us today, and I'm grateful for our viewers, listeners, and I'll just wish everyone a happy, joyful weekend. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah. And when you feel stuck in any type of something and you don't know your way out, but you don't want to stay there, laugh. Find some way to laugh at yourself, even in the midst of plunging a toilet and getting popped up with shitty water. I found a way to laugh at the circumstance. So until next week, guys, we appreciate you. We love you. Please reach out if you want to be in touch. And Alexander, join us anytime you want.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.